Christmas Eve, 1971. Inside Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima, the capital of Peru, people bustled about. A scene of hurried activity. With Christmas approaching, many were preparing to travel home to be with their families. On the tarmac, Líneas Aéreas Nacionales SA Flight 508 was making its final preparations for takeoff. The aircraft, an L-188A Electra, was manufactured by the Lockheed Corporation, a large turboprop airliner. The flight was scheduled to depart from Lima, stop in Pucallpa, and finally arrive in Iquitos, the largest city in the Amazon rainforest. The route would take it over the world's longest mountain range, the Andes Mountains, and across the vast Amazon rainforest. Flight 508 had flown this route countless times, and the crew was highly experienced. However, disaster was looming. December 24, 1971. It was a Friday, Christmas Eve. At 11:50 a.m., passengers began boarding Flight 508. There were 92 people on board, 86 passengers, and 6 crew members. Among the passengers was a pretty teenage girl, Julianne Koepke. She was 17 years old, wearing a floral dress and simple sandals. Her long, blonde hair flowed over her shoulders. She and her mother were traveling to Pucallpa to join her father for Christmas. They had originally planned to return 5 days earlier, but Julianne wanted to attend her high school graduation ceremony, so they postponed their trip. Her mother was only able to secure tickets for the day before Christmas. Prior to this, Julianne's father had warned them against flying with Líneas Aéreas Nacionales SA, because the airline had a poor reputation in recent years, with frequent delays and even mechanical problems. However, with the holidays approaching, tickets were scarce. This airline was the only one with available seats, as all others were sold out. Julianne's mother didn't want to delay their trip any further, so she booked the flight, believing the short flight time would get them there quickly. After boarding, Julianne and her mother made their way to row 19 on the right side of the aircraft. Julianne sat in the window seat, 19F, which offered a clear view of the right wing. Her mother sat in the middle seat, 19E. In the aisle seat, 19D, sat a heavy-set man. At noon, the plane taxied down the runway and took off on time. The flight from Lima to Pucallpa was only supposed to take an hour. Julianne was in good spirits, looking out the window at the scenery below and chatting with her mother. 25 minutes later, the flight attendants began serving lunch. Sunlight streamed into the cabin as passengers enjoyed their meals. After some time, the plane climbed to an altitude of 10,000 feet, high above the Andes Mountains. Soon after, the plane entered a cloud bank. Passengers could no longer see the ground, and the plane began to shake violently. Julianne didn't think much of it, but her mother looked anxious. She kept glancing out the window, hoping the plane would emerge from the clouds soon. The crew repeatedly made safety announcements, trying to calm the frightened passengers. The man in the aisle seat, 19D, had fallen asleep after lunch. As the turbulence intensified, the cabin filled with screams. Luggage began falling from the overhead compartments. The sleeping man was jolted awake by a falling suitcase. He gripped the armrests tightly, a look of terror on his face, and let out an incoherent yell. After crossing the Andes Mountains, the plane reached the Amazon rainforest. The weather hadn't improved. The thunderstorm seemed even fiercer. The plane appeared to be flying directly through the storm. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the window. Julian Koepke began to feel uneasy. She saw a bright flash on the right wing of the plane. Lightning had struck. Flames erupted quickly. Terrified, Julian Koepke grabbed her mother's hand. Other passengers on the plane were screaming. Some closed their eyes and prayed. Others clung tightly to their loved ones. Julian Koepke's mother said in despair, "This is the end. It's all over." As soon as she spoke, the plane began to plummet. Oxygen masks dropped from the overhead compartments. Items tumbled from the luggage racks. Everyone screamed. The cabin was in chaos. Julian Koepke closed her eyes, her mind blank. Suddenly, she was thrown from the plane, still strapped to a row of seats, spinning through the air. The seatbelt held her securely. But her mother and the heavy-set man were gone. By now, the plane had disintegrated. Julian Koepke had no time for fear. She felt only dizziness and nausea. Then she lost consciousness. She passed out. After some time, Julian Koepke slowly regained consciousness. She was on the ground, soaked, covered in mud. Her right sandal was missing. She was in the rainforest, lying beneath the airplane seat, struggling to breathe. She tried to lift her head, but felt dizzy. After several attempts, she failed. Julian Koepke realized she had survived a plane crash. She had fallen from the sky. Her mother was nowhere to be seen. She feared the worst. She felt heartbroken and helpless, as if the world had abandoned her. She wanted to see her surroundings, but her glasses were gone. Her left eye was swollen shut, and her vision was blurry. After a while, she struggled out from under the seat. But as she tried to stand, everything went black. She had to lie back down. After resting, she tried again to sit up. Her right clavicle was fractured. She had a deep cut on her right arm, and another on her left calf. But none were life-threatening. Still, she was too dizzy to stand. These were symptoms of a concussion. She called out for her mother, but there was no answer. The forest was eerily silent. The sounds of birds and rustling leaves were starkly clear. Julian Koepke felt a pang of guilt. If it hadn't been for her graduation ceremony, her family would have been reunited days ago. Now this crash had happened. It was irreversible. The more she thought about it, the sadder she became. She couldn't help but cry. Julian Koepke was born in Germany to intellectual parents. Both were renowned scientists, dedicated to studying rainforest animals. They had traveled thousands of miles with their daughter to settle in remote Peru. In 1968, they established a simple research station in the rainforest. Panguana. It was a small hut built of wood and dried grass. Despite the harsh conditions, they were content to pursue their passion. Both felt fulfilled. Julian Koepke stayed with her parents, and the family lived a secluded life. Influenced by her parents, she became knowledgeable about the rainforest's flora and fauna. Later, Julian Koepke left the rainforest to attend high school in Lima, the capital. Her mother joined her. To care for her, her father moved to Pucallpa and occasionally visited Panguana for research. After the crash, Julian Koepke tried to calm herself down. Thinking back to before the crash, she vaguely remembered flying over the Andes Mountains and reaching the Amazon rainforest. So she must be somewhere in the Amazon rainforest now. To survive, she had to make use of everything around her. One day after the crash, Julian Koepke struggled to her feet and started searching for anything useful among the scattered debris. She found a bag of candy, which was undoubtedly a precious supply. Besides that, she also found a small piece of bread, but it was soaked and covered in mud. Julienne Koepke tried to take a bite, but it tasted too awful to swallow, so she threw it away. News of the Líneas Aéreas Nacionales S.A. crash spread quickly. Many passengers' families, upon hearing the news, rushed to the airport. The airline only knew the location of Flight 508's last signal was shortly after it flew over the Andes Mountains. Facing questions from many families, the airline could only offer reassurance, saying they had dispatched helicopters to search the crash site and were doing everything possible to find survivors. But everyone knew the chances of survival were slim. Julienne Koepke in the rainforest was unaware of the outside world. Barefoot on one foot, she struggled to walk, searching for her mother as she went. There were many mosquitoes in the rainforest, and Julienne Koepke, wearing only a thin dress, quickly found her exposed skin covered in red, itchy bites. But for her, this wasn't the biggest problem. She had no idea where she was. If she went in the wrong direction, she would lose her chance of survival. The rainforest was full of unknown dangers. One wrong step could cost her life. She suddenly remembered her father saying that if you were trapped in the rainforest, the first thing to do was find a river and follow it downstream. This meant heading towards lower elevations, where there might be human settlements. As long as she persisted, there would be a chance of rescue. The rainforest vegetation was extremely dense. Thick vines intertwined, and bushes were impenetrable. Many places were impossible to walk through. It was difficult to move forward without tools. However, following a river would be relatively easier. At least she wouldn't be blocked by dense vegetation, and would be less likely to get lost. Also, the river could provide drinking water, and there might be fruits or small animals along the banks that could provide her with food. With this in mind, Julienne Koepke started searching for a river. After walking for a while, she actually heard the sound of flowing water. Following the sound, she found a small stream. This boosted Julienne Koepke's confidence. Ignoring her pain, she quickly followed the stream downstream. Gradually, the small stream grew larger and became a river. Julienne Koepke took every step carefully to avoid slipping or tripping over vines. Her right foot was bare, and gravel and thorns stung the sole of her foot, making walking even more difficult. When she got tired, she would find a relatively flat spot to sit and rest. When she was unbearably hungry, she would eat a piece of candy to regain her strength. At night, she would find a relatively safe place to sleep, avoiding damp lowlands or tree roots swarming with ants. She would cover herself with large leaves. The sounds of various animals echoed through the rainforest at night. Julienne Koepke remained vigilant. Sometimes when it rained, she would shiver with cold. Usually, she had to endure until morning, resting only briefly after sunrise. Then she would continue her journey. Julienne Koepke often heard the sound of helicopters overhead. It might be the rescue team. She excitedly waved her arms towards the sky, but the tall trees and dense foliage of the rainforest blocked the view. The helicopters couldn't see her. In the vast, endless rainforest, Julienne Koepke felt utterly insignificant. Even with the helicopter overhead, she couldn't attract its attention. She had no means to start a fire, no way to signal for help with smoke. On her third day in the rainforest, Julienne Koepke spotted a charred airplane in the riverbed. Debris was scattered near the engine. This confirmed her suspicion that the plane had broken apart mid-air. The wreckage was widespread. Finding survivors would be difficult for rescuers. On the fourth day, Julienne Koepke stumbled upon a row of airplane seats. Upon closer inspection, she discovered bodies in the seats. They were clearly deceased. The impact from the fall had been so forceful that the seats were embedded about a meter into the ground. Combined with the heat, the bodies had begun to decompose and smell. Some were head down, mostly buried in the mud, with only their feet exposed. Terrified, Julienne Coepque picked up a stick and turned over one of the feet. Seeing the red nail polish, she knew it wasn't her mother. Her mother didn't wear nail polish. She clung to the hope that her mother might still be alive, perhaps like herself, somewhere in the rainforest, searching for a way out. On the 5th day, Julienne Coepque was starving. She regretted discarding the piece of bread, despite it being wet and dirty. In these circumstances, it would have been invaluable. Following the river downstream might lead to safety, but danger lurked everywhere. Piranhas and caimans inhabited the river. Every step required extreme caution. Fortunately, Julienne Coepque was familiar with these animals. She had encountered various wildlife while living in the rainforest with her parents, and knew how to protect herself. Piranhas and caimans were dangerous, but they wouldn't usually attack unless provoked. Compared to these two, Julienne Coepque was more worried about stingrays. These flat, cartilaginous fish have a venomous spine on their tail, connected to a venom gland. When threatened, they use their spine to inject venom. Typically, they hide beneath the mud and sand on the riverbed, making them difficult to see. Stepping on one accidentally could result in a sting, causing swelling, muscle spasms, and intense pain, and even be life-threatening. Whenever she had to wade through the water, Julienne Coepque would use a stick to probe the riverbed, prodding ahead with every step before moving forward. Besides stingrays, leeches also infested the water. Julienne Coepque's injured left leg was a frequent target for leeches, which were difficult to remove. As time went on, Julienne Coepque grew weaker. She walked constantly, with the bag of candy as her only sustenance. Along the way she saw Brazil nut trees, one of the largest trees in the Amazon rainforest. Their fruit is rich in oils and protein, but the shells are incredibly hard. Lacking tools, Julienne Coepque couldn't access the flesh inside, and had to press on. On her 7th day in the rainforest, Julienne Coepque was horrified to discover maggots writhing in the wound on her right arm. They were the larvae of blowflies, which parasitize open wounds and feed on living tissue. Nauseated, Julienne Coepque tried to pull the maggots out, but they only burrowed deeper. The pain forced her to stop and let them fester. She quickened her pace, hoping for rescue soon. Otherwise, a worsening infection could be life-threatening. Day 10, trapped in the rainforest. Julienne Coepque was nearing her limit. Utterly exhausted, her feet swollen and white from constant immersion in water. Hunger and infected wounds slowed her pace. By evening, she reached a clearing by the river. She lay down, her consciousness fading. She saw or thought she saw a small white boat. Initially dismissing it as a hallucination, she paid it no mind. But the boat's outline grew clearer, slowly drifting towards her. Julienne Coepque forced herself to her feet, reaching the boat and confirming it was real. This meant people were nearby. Hope surged within her. She considered stealing the boat, escaping the rainforest downriver. But she didn't. Looking around, Julienne Coepque spotted a roughly 10-foot embankment. A narrow path atop it, seemingly trodden by human feet. She laboriously climbed the embankment, following the path. Before nightfall, she found a hut. A simple structure, its walls made of rough-hewn wood. the roof covered with palm leaves. Firewood and tattered fishing nets lay scattered outside. Julian Coepque approached the hut, finding it empty. Inside, only a plastic-wrapped boat, an engine and a bottle of gasoline. It appeared the hut was used for storage and temporary shelter. Julian Coepque decided to rest there for the night, planning to leave in the morning. Seeing the gasoline, she remembered when her parents lived in the rainforest, and their dog had been infested with botflies. Her father had poured gasoline on the wounds. Shortly after, unable to stand the fumes, the larvae crawled out. With this in mind, Julian Coepque grabbed the gasoline, steeling herself, and poured it on her right arm. Intense burning pain made her cry out. Though painful, it was effective. Soon, larvae wriggled out of her skin. After removing 35, Julian Coepque. These are brightly colored, highly poisonous frogs. Their skin secretes a toxin that quickly paralyzes predators. They coat their arrowheads with the toxin. For hunting, Julian Coepque was starving, but still couldn't resist trying to catch them. Luckily, she was too weak. They easily escaped her. She caught none. And so, exhausted and hungry, she fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, Julian Coepque groggily heard voices. Opening the hut's door, she saw 3 men approaching. They were local lumberjacks, speaking Spanish. Julian Coepque had learned Spanish from her father, and could understand them. Hearing her story, the 3 men were astonished. They immediately took her to their logging camp, providing her with food, water, and medicine. And so, after 11 harrowing days in the Amazon rainforest, Julian Coepque had miraculously survived. After a day's rest, the lumberjacks took her by boat to the nearest town, Turnavista district. When the locals learned what had happened, they offered their help. Pilot flew her by helicopter to a hospital in Pucallpa. Having heard his daughter was alive, Julian Coepque's father rushed to the hospital. When they were finally reunited, they embraced, weeping. After being examined by a doctor, Julian Coepque was found to have a fractured right clavicle, lacerations on her right arm and left calf, and an injury to her left eye. She had also suffered a head injury and had a concussion. But for someone who had fallen thousands of feet, her survival was a miracle. After a period of treatment, Julian Coepque was discharged from the hospital. News of her survival spread rapidly, and many people found it incredible. Experts, after careful analysis, believed that Julian Coepque's survival after the plane disintegrated was due to several factors. First, when the plane broke apart in mid-air, Julian Coepque was strapped to a row of seats by her seatbelt. During the fall, the seats acted as a makeshift parachute. Second, Julian Coepque fell through the center of a thunderstorm. The updraft slowed her descent. Third, the dense vegetation at the landing site cushioned her impact. Due to these coincidences, Julian Coepque did not suffer fatal injuries. Her experience living in the rainforest also greatly aided her subsequent survival. After Julian Coepque recovered, she helped search and rescue teams locate the crash site. Her mother's remains were also found. Evidence suggests that after the crash, at least 14 people, including the pilot, survived. Tragically, they all perished while waiting for rescue. Julian Coepque was the sole survivor of LANSA Flight 508. The cause of the accident was closely related to pilot error. The aircraft was flying at 21,000 feet when it entered a thunderstorm with light turbulence. To avoid delaying the holiday flight, the pilot chose to risk continuing through the storm. The plane was struck by lightning, causing the right wing to detach and the fuselage to catch fire. Líneas Aéreas Nacionales S.A.'s reputation was severely damaged. Public confidence in its safety management and operational capabilities was seriously undermined. Peruvian authorities revoked the airline's operating license. Juliane Koepke later returned to Germany. 8 years later, she received her doctorate and returned to the Panguana Biological Research Station, taking over her father's position. She continued her zoological research and dedicated herself to rainforest conservation, aspiring to become a distinguished scientist like